Over my years as a realtor in Waterloo region, I've had the pleasure of meeting plenty of successful person. Here are some of their stories. Welcome to People Around Town. I'm super excited to have this gentleman on today, and he's found time. He's one of the fellas that are retired but not retired, because I think his days are not boring by any means. Everybody knows him, it seems, except for myself. This is the one and only Peter Woolstencroft, Professor Emeritus and Adjunct Professor, University of Waterloo, Political Science Department. I'm so excited to have you on.
Oh, I'm delighted to be here.
This is awesome. So, I guess a little bit of our history, I think, how I was able to squeeze him in here. A gentleman that works with me at my brokerage, and actually a good dear friend of mine, Brendan Murphy, his father, Frank Murphy, who I think I'll get on here sooner or later, is close friends with Peter. And actually, they even let my dad to come in, hang out with their group. So I don't know if our conversation is going to take us along that line, but this is a wealth of knowledge, I guess, specializing in political science. However, when you talk to as many people as you do, that wealth of knowledge just expands and expands and expands. And I think you have to keep yourself open to thoughts other than just your own to really be able to see growth. So I guess I'm going to start with this. You seem to be somebody that either likes or is fascinated with people. And is it the differences of the people? Is it the similarities of the people? But you talk to so many people. What draws you to meeting more people, getting more knowledge, these sort of things?
Well, stories, experiences, insights, and my interest in politics means, and sometimes people are surprised to hear this, that I'm interested in everything.
Yeah.
And so when I meet somebody and I get some information, I immediately have a lot of questions. So just recently I met a pacifist, and I said, well, this is interesting. Now, if you were the pacifist Prime Minister of the United Kingdom at the start of World War II, what would you have done? So that led to a very interesting discussion. What does a pacifist do when the Nazis are coming over the English Channel? Mm-hmm. So we had a long discussion about the dilemmas of life. And so if you're interested in people and you listen carefully, you have interesting conversations. And I wasn't expecting to say this, but in the last year, I've had 3 people, men, in their 70s, as they're talking with me, start to cry because they're revealing traumas from their childhood. And that comes from, and I got this from my late wife, Lynn, listening and thinking about what people are saying. And it means that I think I have a very rich life because I have a lot of interesting conversations.
Right.
And this is on a good start.
I see this and I'm getting goosebumps already. So if I end up crying through this, it could very well
number
happen.
4, I have enough digits to handle it.
Oh, there you go. Thank you very much. Oh, gosh. Okay, so many ways we can take this for now. I would say, okay, political affiliations. What would you say your political, if we might as well just get there now, what would we say your political stance is now, and has it changed over the years? Or your stance has remained the same and the parties have changed? Different thoughts.
The answer is both. My stances have changed because when I was a young person, I was very libertarian, and I was very much anti-state. And the state was a problem and was getting in the way of people. And I don't think that way now. So I'm not a libertarian. I was very active in the Progressive Conservative Party of Canada, and also in Alberta when I lived there, in Ontario when I moved here in 1970. And I have no formal political involvement or membership now, 2025. I do vote. I find the voting much more difficult. But I do vote, and I do make decisions as I have to. Which party will I vote for? So I have changed in a number of different ways. And so why the change? I think that I understand that as much as we need society, and life without society is impossible to conceive, whatever community you're living in. But also I understand that the rules and structures of society can limit people's life options and possibilities.
Okay.
So here's an example. When my wife and I moved here in 1970, and she got herself elected, surprisingly, to the school board. We moved here in July, and she's running for school board in September.
Wow.
She got elected. And she's pregnant at some point later on in the subsequent year, and she's advised by the administration of the then Waterloo County Board of Education that she should resign because she's pregnant. So people are horrified to hear that in 2025. I've met a number of women who've told me that's what they had to do, and they would take employment in another school system. So there was a societal structure and a set of norms that were very limiting. And so I'm very conscious of how society limits people's possibilities, which I did not understand when I was an 18-year-old, 20-year-old, and had all the questions figured out and knew everything that there had to be known.
Sure. And you're right.
I've come a long way, baby.
Yeah. which is awesome. And now I guess when did growing up in Alberta?
Yes.
What did you want to be, and then when did political science really become your stream? And like, was there a point? Was there a moment?
Well, I was always very interested in politics at a very young age. Before I hit 10 years old, I was interested in politics. My family were refugees from England. We came here in 1948. My father was a doctor and did not want to work for the new National Health Service. He did not believe in socialized medicine. So he ended up in Alberta, and so political reasons led us to move from England to Alberta to Canada. And I was very interested in politics for that reason, but I was also intrigued by American politics, and I was not interested in Canada, ironically, since I'm now a Canadian politics specialist. But I was very much intrigued by the United States, and I was reading Time magazine and Newsweek and U.S. News and World Report and the New Yorker magazine. I was reading a lot of American magazines, and Canadian magazines were not that important to me, or newspapers. So, but as time went on, I got more and more interested in Canada and more fearful of the United States. So I'll put it that way.
Okay, and when you talk about the United States, you brought that up, and this is probably the way this conversation is going to sort of jump up and around.
Can't avoid it now.
You can't avoid it now. Now the Canadian political scene, and I guess the way we handle our governance in government is it's a different manner than you see in the U.S. What are some of the, or maybe you can just flat out say the way Canada handles it is just far and away better than the U.S., but are there any elements of U.S. style politics that Canada could see a benefit from, and vice versa?
Well, the United States has to understand the politics of consensus building, which I always thought was part of the American political process, but as we speak in 2025, it's now enemy versus enemy, and so it's very divisive, and people hate each other either side. And how many conversations have you had? I've had many conversations with people who tell me how hateful it is to go to the United States nowadays, and they hate going there for a number of reasons. One is they can't talk about what's happening in American politics because you don't know whether you're going to run into a Democrat or Republican. True. And it's not pleasant. So I think we've done a much better job than that. I think one of my laments about Canada, and there's an irony in this, of course, is the decline of business people in politics. So when I look at MPs and their backgrounds, MPPs, provincial legislators, school board trustees, councillors. Most of them have had very little business experience, unlike the United States. And I think they might go too far in having business politicians or business-centered politicians. We don't. So when I was following this in the 60s and 70s, I realized that on councils, provincial legislatures, the Federal House of Commons, there were a lot of people there who'd had considerable business experiences and success, right. And now they have greatly disappeared. Now, Mark Carney is very much the exception to the generalization, so I'm talking generally. But if you go look at the kinds of people who sat on councils in Waterloo, the year I arrived here in 1970, there's a big change. 1970, most of them were male, very few women. Now we have mostly women, and most of them had business backgrounds. And this was a natural route for them to go into politics at a certain age, so they were older people. Now business people are generally absent from the councils of Waterloo, Cambridge, Kitchener, Waterloo Regional Council, and the like. And so I think the business voice has been weakened in Canada, and I think that's been to our detriment in the last 25 years or so.
I didn't even think about that, but that's true. I don't know. Now our politicians are flat out politicians.
Well, but they come out of aspirational.
With the exception of Mike Maurice.
Mike Maurice,
I'll get you on, Mikey.
Yeah, a good man. And it's sad that he lost, but I'm not surprised. I thought he was going to lose, but the people who have actually had to build a business and deal with the financial implications of decisions are not heard at council, and that's a loss for us. Now I say most political scientists don't even think about this or worry about it, but it's been on my mind, as I say, for some time. And when I try to get business people to be interested in running, they're hostile to the idea. Not even cool about it. They're hostile. It's a difficult job, of course, but also you're exposed to all kinds of social pressures and threats. I mean, we read about politicians who now have to have protection because things are happening. So it's an ugly world. But the removal of business leaders as political leaders, I think, is sad. And in the United States, a lot of politicians, whether Democrat or Republican, have had business record and business success, which means that they've had an ability to make decisions taking into account financial considerations.
That's a very valid point, because even I myself have learned in real estate, and it was taught to me before, keep religion and politics out of it. There's zero or little to no upside by showing your affiliations either way.
It's interesting because, to me, I have very interesting discussions with religion, and I used to hear that as a child. Well, don't talk about religion. I think I have religious discussions which are always fascinating, and I'm interested in why people believe what they do and why they don't believe other things.
So I guess you could say you can have the discussion, but sooner or later, if somebody's interested in you, they will care to know your affiliation.
Yeah.
Okay? And even though you have mentioned in the U.S. that U.S. is very divisive, I think over the past, good while, I guess, let's say 6 years, I would even say in Canada, there is a polarization from, if anybody knows where the middle is, there's a polarization between parties and affiliations as well. And you can say, no, that's not the case, but from what I see and run into, I would say it is the case. Do you think, what part of media plays in that, and what do you, if the media is doing it, like, why would they do it? What's the upside in it?
They build an audience, and they want ratings, and they want people to be coming back to watch them. I have a window sticker on my car that says it's hard to program the middle. And that I trace that to my buddy Aristotle, who warned people about the excluded middle in discussions. So that's where I rephrased what he had to say. So what I'm getting at is that in the modern times, and this I see this particularly in the United States, is that people have a very limited number of media outlets to which they pay any attention to, and they condemn the other ones that they don't follow or read. And so their truth is found within a narrow ecosystem. And the nature of democracy and the obligation that a citizen has in a democracy is that there will be a variety of perspectives and viewpoints that you will hear, and you have to make some decisions about which way you go. That's a demanding job, and so people are taking the easy route to get into a silo, and I have some family members in Canada here who have fallen down that trap. So when I communicate with them, I think that they are very limited in what they know and what they think they know and what they think they should be supporting, and whom they trust in quotation marks, and whom they condemn, and that they're not being good citizens because they're not considering the wider range of perspectives. So one of the things as a political scientist I have learned is to try to read as widely as possible, whether it be more conservative or more liberal, more radical publications and sources of information. Now, I'm privileged because I have a deep interest in that.
Yes.
But most people, I fear, I'm sorry to say, don't do that, and so they're easily moved by the leaders of whatever side they're on, by what the leader is saying. And my advice to people is, you should come and spend a summer at my Camp Skeptic, and figure out ways to think about what people are saying, and maybe think about alternate ways than they want you to think. The politicians always want you to think in a certain way, and somebody who's been immensely involved in politics. It's perhaps ironic that I'm saying that, because, but I know what's going on, and you really have to think about it. And that makes being a citizen a difficult job.
I'm loving this, by the way.
I'm still here.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you. You're not hating it yet, and I appreciate all the insight that you're giving us. Like, for this reason, it's pretty obvious why you're still, though retired, still active in politics and have play an advisory role, I'm sure, and always happy to speak your what you believe to be your truth, right?
Yeah, especially now that I don't have tenure, I'm free to speak my mind.
There you go, and I'm sure with you have media outlets, that reach out to you for your perspective on things as well. Have you ever found any problems with media outlets almost willingly taking you out of context? Or for the most part, is you find that the media outlets that you're dealing with are playing fair game with you?
Most of the time. Sometimes I've wondered, well, was I misquoted? Or is it more likely the case that I didn't stress a point enough? I mean, some of it has to be on me.
Sure.
And so I'm mindful of that. I'm also very mindful. I mean, a lot of people are very, very critical of the media, and that's fine. I don't have any issue with that. But to disdain the media is another matter. So I have a lot of respect for the difficulty of reporting the news. And I've been in newsrooms for a variety of reasons, and I've watched it. And if your listeners ever get a chance to watch All the President's Men, and there are other movies, but that's the one that comes to mind, you realize the chaos of a newsroom and trying to get information and make a coherent narrative out of it. So every narrative is incomplete. And so, yes, there have been instances in my past or my wife's past in which there have been problems with the way the media have treated things. But on the big picture, we are so blessed to live in a society that has an abundance, though it's narrowing, source of media outlets. Now, take Toronto. Sometimes I say, and you can have all of Toronto you want, but think about it. It's got four major papers: Toronto Sun, Toronto Star, Globe and Mail, National Post, and various community papers. This community has a newspaper, various radio stations, a television station, local community newspapers. All of those are valued and should be treasured. And I felt for a person I met who came from the interior of BC, an area I know fairly well, and how upset he was when his father died, tragically in an accident, and because the local paper had closed down 6 months before, he had no ability to tell the people who used to read that newspaper that his father had died, because they don't follow social media.
Right.
So that's a big loss in our community when those local papers collapse, and people are missing something that was important to them.
So, and now I appreciate you bringing this up, and if you don't mind, I'm going to make reference to your dearly deceased wife, Lynn Woolstencroft, which is past mayor of Waterloo.
Yeah.
At this point in time, you are a political science professor as well as your wife is serving as mayor.
Yes.
Correct? You must have a love for politics, because being in the midst of that and the first hand of that, I'm sure it was a proud time for you, but how did you handle the stresses? Were you able to, as a family, even unplug for a weekend, or was that just a way of life?
Well, it is always difficult, hard to unplug, and what you're talking about is the Rim Park controversy that hit my wife totally out of the blue a few months into her mayoralty, and that was all absorbing for the next 2.5 years, and so your listeners should know that the city was supposed to sign a financial statement or document where the city taxpayers were committed to X dollars, and when the document was signed by the city and revealed after the signing, it was X plus Y dollars, and a big difference. So a big debt fell to the city, so there was a public inquiry, and my wife had been a councillor but then became the mayor, and that fell for her to handle it. So I will say at a personal level, it is very difficult, and I've talked to other politicians who've been in a similar situation, and what they've said to me is exactly what happened to me, is that it's harder on the spouse than in the politician in question, because I know what my spouse is going through. I know that she's up to 4 o'clock in the morning trying to read stuff and understand stuff, knowing that she has a meeting to go to at 9 o'clock, in which is going to be questioned by lawyers or whomever, and have to deal with all these things. And I know what the energy she's putting in, and I also know that in her email there's all kinds of nasty messages. Yeah. And some of them highly personalized, and she simply, became a politician because she wanted to make things within the community's understanding of what a good thing was, make things better for the city, and she did in so many ways. And so it is very, very difficult for me. It's even harder often for the children of the politician in question. And I've read many, many very sad accounts of politicians' kids being bullied at school because their politician's parent is in the paper and there's a scandal. And the kids, of course, are taking sides one way or another, and so the kids pay a price. So it's not an abstraction. It's very, very personal in the home. My responsibility, which I tried to do the best I could, not 100%, is provide as much comfort and assurance to Lynn when she came home from the many meetings that she had to attend to. And I don't think people appreciate the emotional toil that people are going through. As I think of Mark Carney, married with children, and all the things he has to deal with, And the back of his mind is, I love my wife, but I haven't seen her for a while. I love my kids, and I haven't had a chance to talk with them and listen to what they're dealing with. And all of those things are important to a loving parent. So there's a big price to pay, no doubt about it.
You talk about Waterloo, and politics with your wife being mayor of Waterloo. During that time, or I guess over the period of your wife's service for our city and community, you were involved in probably some campaigns. And any sort of anecdotes or stories from either that campaign or other campaigns where maybe you've been pulled upon for your advice?
Well, I've been involved in many campaigns, over 40 in my lifetime. I've lost count, and my Lynn ran in 16 elections.
Wow.
In 32 years.
Wow.
So our garage was full of lawn signs and paraphernalia, and that you get from campaigning almost all the time, it seems like. The one thing that comes to mind, and lots of things do happen, and I will say the first thing is that election campaigns, for most people, are just the ads that they see on TV, federal, provincial, or the flyers they get at the door. And but an election campaign is a very interesting human experience. Okay. Because in order to mount a campaign, you have to raise money, which is a story unto itself. Also, you have to mobilize support. You want to attract attention and bring people into the campaign, find a place where they will fit. And most of the time, nobody's being paid. So this is a volunteer organization, when most of the people don't really know each other at the beginning of their time in the campaign. And so the campaign manager, usually a volunteer, sometimes paid, but usually a volunteer, has to marshal time and resources to get things done in order to get the candidate elected. And so people don't appreciate that while the election campaign involves a candidate, the person whose name is on the ballot, there's all these other people who are playing very important roles. And these people are very important because they're part of the heartbeat of democracy, because they're giving up time. They could be doing other things. They'd be growing petunias or reading or doing whatever. But they're putting time and energy because they believe that this candidate is going to make a difference, positive difference in the community. All right,
give me some funny stories.
I'll tell you one.
Doesn't have to be funny.
I was knocking on doors for Lynn, and an older guy came to the door, and I explained what I was there for, and he said, "Oh, I'm a candidate. I'm a supporter of so and so." And I said, "Well, that's great, because you're the first one I've run into." So an hour later, I get home, and Lynn gets home, and the phone rings, and the candidate in question calls and says, "Lynn, one of your canvassers insulted one of my supporters." And then he recounted this conversation, and he didn't know that I was the canvasser. So I already told Lynn about this, so we're quietly laughing as we listen to this guy grumping away about our campaigning. So, yeah, always remember that line. "Oh, I'm so glad to meet one. I knew there must be at least somebody supporting your candidate." Yeah, so there you are. Election campaigns, we have always people knocking down lawn signs.
Yes,
and that's annoying. I never thought it was a systematic thing. A lot of people do. Oh, it's a campaign to knock down all my signs. I go, yeah, right. Mm-hmm. But they're expensive, and then you have to replace them. So, but politics is always expensive. And an American political operative a long time ago was giving a talk about politics, and he said, There are two things important in politics. One is money,
Yes.
and I can't remember the other. So here's a point I want to make as a political scientist, and somebody who's also a very actively involved citizen. I asked Lynn once, did you ever feel that somebody wanted you to do something that was corrupt, make a deal? And she said, only once did I think that somebody was heading in that direction. So remember, she got involved in 1970, and her political career ended in 2003, and many different offices and so on, and many decisions. Politicians are there making decisions all the time. But by the way, so no corruption.
Sure.
Which cannot be said of some other areas in the world. I'll just put it like that. Some of them close to us. But I was having a discussion with a politician just very recently, and she said to me, I've learned that almost everything that I do politically is unknown to but a few. I said, yes, it's like an iceberg, because it doesn't make the newspaper, doesn't make the media. It's important stuff, but it's not sexy enough, it's not big news enough, there's not a scandal, there's not a human tragedy, whatever. And so you're making many decisions. I'll give you one instance, and this is not funny, but it's very revealing. When Lynn was first on the school board, she discovered to her horror that the new Waterloo County Board of Education, it was called, had elementary schools in the rural areas that have been just brought into the County Board of Education.
Yes.
Elementary schools with no libraries.
No libraries.
No library. Now you just look startled. Now I know what you look like when you're surprised.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but that's
there you go.
ridiculous.
I've often wondered what you look like when you were startled. Now I know.
You caught me.
Yeah, and Lynn was horrified. I remember when she came home and said, "I can't believe it. We have elementary schools and no libraries," and that led to a big fight where she had to persuade the administration and her fellow trustees that you cannot have elementary schools who are supposed to be introducing children to the world of education if they're not being given opportunities to read. And if you don't have a library, the opportunities are very limited. And let's also be blunt. There were a lot of households then, and maybe nowadays, I'm not saying anything about nowadays, but then, that if you walked into the house, there were no reading materials there. No newspaper, no magazines, no books, maybe one.
That's very possibly. And it's not like they had tablets down there anyway.
No, they had tablets of another sort.
Yes, there you go. Well, I guess from that perspective, hey, in many regards, Waterloo Region's come a long way, right? And I guess, how do you feel about the current state of Waterloo Region from, you can say, we can go political, you can go economic, whatever. So Waterloo Region is, I hate to dull you down into, an overview, but what do you feel about Waterloo Region right now? What do we have going for us? What are some pitfalls we need to avoid right now, maybe? Anything you'd like to say?
There's always uncertainties, and I spent some time reading about cities that rise and then they fall. But Lynn and I had two job offers in 1970. One was the University of Waterloo, and another place I won't mention. They offered me more money, but I chose Waterloo, and I did for a number of reasons. But to your point, one of the things that impressed me about this community was, though there was a big industrial base, in fact, most people do not know that the Kitchener, as was called, census metropolitan area, was the most industrialized in Canada. Not Hamilton, not Windsor, was what most people would think, and which I used to think, but I discovered not so, because of all the big auto plants that were here, or Budd Automotive, those kinds of places, and all the tire factories, and lots of blue-collar employment, particularly in Kitchener. But fundamentally, this was a very diverse economy. And think of all the insurance companies that are here, and then the various factories. So many of them have gone, but we have reinvented ourselves a number of times. So this is a rapidly growing area, and maybe too rapidly for some people. Some people think that.
Sure.
But that also, generally speaking, is a place of opportunity. When you think we have 2 universities, a community college, lots of other things going on. So that means there's a diverse economy, which is to be lauded and appreciated. Now, in 2025, the big question is, what will tariffs do? What would Donald Trump do in terms of the Canadian economy? And we're vulnerable, just like other areas. Not as vulnerable as, say, Windsor,
Yes.
or Hamilton because of steel, Windsor because of automobiles. But we have our vulnerabilities, and there's lots of questions about what lies ahead. But when I think of the economic history of Kitchener-Waterloo, Waterloo County, now Waterloo Region, over the many decades, the thing is that the hits have been handled and the community has been stronger. I mean, I remember the terrible feeling that was felt in our region when BlackBerry essentially died.
Right.
Now, it's still going, and there's some signs of life, I'm told, but it wasn't the high flyer that it was, and then suddenly all that went by the board. And in many communities, the collapse of such a major enterprise would have been
Just crushed them.
For a generation.
Yeah.
And this community rebounded, and yes, to my surprise. So, yeah. So the diversity and the variety, or the diversity of the economy, and the ability to respond to changes, as there always will be in the business climate, is paramount here. So we have many advantages. We've made a lot of sensible decisions. And when we first moved here, one of the first things I heard that people were complaining about was the Conestoga Parkway. It was not being built. It was being talked about. Great opposition from people. And here's a lesson in life. When big things come along, the first reaction of human beings is no, 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 and that's what happened here. So I was watching this as a political scientist, and I was trying to understand, what would be the reason for this, and why was there so much opposition? Now, London had similar ideas. London down the road here.
Yes.
They don't have a parkway, and when you go to London, you run into terrible traffic congestion. You can't wait to get out of there, and you say to yourself, I'm never coming back. Now, the parkway has transformed this community, and my only complaint about the parkway is it's not a 360.
They didn't do the ring road.
Yeah.
I had the pleasures of seeing those ring road drawings.
Yeah, did you? I didn't. Oh.
They look, it would have made so much sense, but that was expensive beechwood real estate.
Yes.
So
yeah. Well, they could have gone further west, and but that this community would have benefited enormously from that. But there was strong opposition, and so I'll conclude this little section by saying I run into people who were young, much younger at the time, who've said to me, I made a big mistake by being opposed, because they now realize it doesn't take you very long to get to the 401. But before the parkway, it took you a long time, because you had to drive through Waterloo, drive through Kitchener, God knows where you were driving to get to the 401. It took you a long time. It was slow and annoying, and now you can do it in a relatively short period, and relatively safely. And so we've benefited. It's been a big boon economically. Same with the LRT. Does London have an LRT?
Nope.
No. Absolutely not. They don't have no idea. We have one, and I have some issues with the LRT, but I have no issues with the concept, and I understand how transformative it is. Mm-hmm. So here's a lesson for people that I've acquired over the years, is that you have to think seriously about the benefits of a project. It's easy to talk about all the negatives.
True.
But you have to think about the benefits, and will this really be a boon to the community or a problem?
So speaking of lessons, and that just brought me to this, we've talked about all the politics that you're doing, and so we're almost just talking about a hobby, if you will. But you were I'm going to call you I knew you as the political science professor at UOW. You don't have to say no, I wasn't, and say other names. No, as far as I'm concerned, you were the one. So, with that said, okay, and you can't get off that part. With that said, what did you find are some of the most rewarding things about being a political science professor?
Wow.
That's a tough one, I know.
No,
I just want to get
because when I retired, and there was an event, Goodbye Peter event, and what I said was that I've been so blessed because I've had this interest since I was 6 or 7 years old in politics, and I found a job where they paid me to read stuff about politics. They paid me to teach classes about politics, and they gave me many opportunities to do other things related to political science and politics. So I've been very blessed. And one of the things is, and I know politics has a very bad reputation, and a lot of negativity attached to it, and sometimes I share that myself. However, my interest in politics means it doesn't matter where I am, whether I'm in New York City or Barcelona. I'm aware of political issues. If I meet somebody, as I met just a couple of days ago from Eritrea, well, I know something about the history of Eritrea and its conflicts with Ethiopia, and I can talk intelligently about that. And then, because of my interest in forest fires, we can have a conversation about forest fires in Africa. Mm-hmm. So my interest in politics means that the whole world is of interest to me. It doesn't matter where I go. And when I was in a jungle in Brazil, and we came to a small village, I immediately am interested in the politics of a small Brazilian jungle village, because how is this place organized?
Yep.
Who are the leaders? How are women treated?
Yeah.
Right? How are children educated? Who looks after the old people? Because I'm always worried about how the old people are going to look after. And and that's what being a political science professor has meant. And I regret having to retire.
Sure.
Because of arthritis. Because when I have conversations with students, and I'm blessed with having a number of conversations with young people, I'd like putting on my professorial glare.
Yes.
Look over my glasses and say, well, what do you mean by this, and why do you think that? So, yeah, I get a lot of questions in my head and a lot of interest. So I've been lucky, and I only wish that people would understand that what a blessing it is to live in a democracy. Mm. That's a cell phone.
Somebody else is calling him for the next appointment. It's his phone. See, Dad, that's how you answer a cell phone. You'll call him back in a second.
Yeah, sorry about that.
No,
I would have taken it
hilarious.
if it was the Prime
So,
Minister.
Dad, that's how you answer a call. Yeah. That's how you answer a call. So, you know what? I think God works in mysterious ways, and we're not going to go down that rabbit hole at this moment.
You don't like talking about mysterious ways?
No. No. I believe that I've gotten goosebumps from multiple things, and we can do, I have a feeling with this there's going to be some questions that are going to come back to me, so I'm going to probably have to pay for your return visit.
Okay, I'm glad to. I don't need to be paid.
Well, we'll figure it out. But before we head out, it felt like you're almost moving towards sort of how you saw your legacy to be, right? And what would you want people to think of as your legacy?
Well, I've taught a number of students. Some of them are teaching at Canadian universities, so I have an interest in that. And I'm not an unusual academic. I'm not unique, but I was interested in the university as my community. So I was given leadership positions, 2 major ones. One was being a co-chair of Campaign Waterloo, which was a campaign on the UW campus for a fundraising campaign, which was immensely successful. So I was asked as a lowly Faculty of Arts professor to do that, to represent the faculty. And I also co-chaired the United Way campaign for 4 years. So I had that opportunity, and I learned a lot, and made some mistakes, and tried to learn from mistakes. I take great pride personally that I introduced a number of things to the city of Waterloo, or University of Waterloo.
Sure.
Co-op political science.
Oh, yeah.
The first co-op political science program in the world was at Waterloo, and that's my baby.
Oh, wonderful.
So I took that idea and persuaded the engineers that it was a good idea and it would work, and it has worked. I started legal studies at Waterloo, which has become a very important part of the Faculty of Arts. Now it's Sociology and Legal Studies department. And it attracts a lot of students, and it's a very successful program. And I'm happy to run into students who've been in legal studies who've never heard of me because they're here now or recently graduated. And then I tell them when I discover legal studies is what they're doing or have done. And they're always very happy, so I get great consolation about that. I started and got a fairly large prize, a Canadian prize for the International Trade Specialization in the Faculty of Arts, and that was a novel idea, and that attracts strong students and has an important educational mission. So I was involved in a lot of stuff like that. One of my friends, who was in economic development, former student of mine, went to other universities for his graduate work and worked for the Ontario government, said in his view the 2 most important developments economically in Ontario since World War II have been, first, the 401, which transformed Ontario.
Yes.
And in a way, analogous to the Conestoga Parkway, which transformed Kitchener-Waterloo.
Correct.
And if you get the right transportation system in place, then it can be so transformative. The second thing he pointed to was the University of Waterloo, because it has generated so many companies, wealth-creating companies, and provided so many students with an excellent education, and they can go with it wherever their education takes them. I was surprised when he told me that. I mean, I know the University of Waterloo has had a big impact. I take note of that. I mean, the 401 clearly number one.
Sure.
Easy to say. So I was lucky to land at Waterloo as opposed to other places, and lucky that the secret of Waterloo is that I, again a lowly faculty member, was able to seize upon ideas and persuade the university at large that these were good ideas, and I could do it in a relatively short period. And
Amazing.
Knowing other universities, it would be something that would take a long time because they're so bureaucratic in the way they make their decisions.
Plus that initial resistance to change.
There's always and that's what everybody has to understand, that in politics is that the resistance to change means that it's based on the assumption that the present is just good enough.
Right.
And we should be satisfied with that. And these big proposals are saying, look, things need to be addressed, and we're going to try to address them in the best way we can. Some communities do that. I think Waterloo has done that. Waterloo being the region of Waterloo.
Correct.
And to pick on poor old London, not so much.
True.
And and I'm glad, there's a new hospital coming, and that will be of great advantage to the community. We'll need another one soon thereafter because of where we're growing. So there are many things that I've admired in the city of Waterloo or region of Waterloo, our political processes, and a lot of people complain or want to get rid of the cities of Waterloo and Kitchener, Cambridge, and just want one government. I voted no against any kind of amalgamation every time, because I think that different voices are worth a lot, and Waterloo has a different voice. Mm-hmm. Kitchener does things differently. We learn from them. Like the Blue Box program started in Kitchener.
Sure.
Lynn got impressed with that and led the fight for the Blue Box in Waterloo. There was great resistance.
Sure.
Yeah, well, you're laughing.
And it's a Kitchener idea.
It was a Kitchener idea. Kitchener is a tremendous incubator. Like the idea of public libraries took root here. Driver education in the schools.
Yes.
All kinds of things that I can associate with Kitchener. I make jokes about Kitchener. I make jokes about everything about your podcast. But I give a lot of credit to Kitchener. I think excellent recreational services.
Yes.
And Waterloo has had to learn a lot from Kitchener, and so we benefit from our complex system of government. And some people want to have one system of government, which means more bureaucracy,
sure,
more procedures, and more expense.
Plus, if somebody just wants a quiet weekend over Thanksgiving, they can go to Waterloo or Cambridge to get away from Oktoberfest. It makes sense.
Yes, the festering sore of October.
Yeah, there you go. Peter, you are, you know what? In today's days, we'd call you an absolute beauty.
Well, thank you, man.
This was awesome. Thank you so much.
If I'd known I was going to get that, I'd been here earlier.
Peter Woolstencroft. Oh, my gosh. Thanks, guys.